I am a big fan of the Fractal Axe USA 2C++ model. This is a model that was added at the request of Metallica's sound tech. So essentially, this is a 2C+ model from a particular Axe firmware that they've just left unchanged, which is pretty cool. And I really gravitated towards this amp when I got my AX8, and I shared the patch, and it's been really popular on AxeChange, which is super cool, and I know a lot of you out there have enjoyed it, so I want to go and recreate it on the Axe 3, and there's a couple of slightly different things that I will do given some of the features on the Axe 3. So I'm playing my PRS SC245. I'm going to just bypass the amp and the cab for now, just so that you guys can have a listen to the DI sound of the guitar and get an idea for kind of where it sits in terms of being bright and dark. So as you can hear, I mean, that's the the least inspiring tone you're ever going to hear today, but it's quite a dark guitar, and this is quite a bright amp, so they kind of work well together in that setting where there's that contrast in the character. So what I've got at the moment is the C++ at stock settings, and the first thing that I'm actually going to do is pick a cab. So it's way easier to select a cab and then dial in the amp rather than the other way around. I'm really happy that in the Axe Effects 3, they have included the impulses from the York Audio bipolar cab pack, which we can find by pressing YA. I need to move my keyboard over so I don't have to keep pausing to look at it. And you can see there is a whole selection of them here, and they're great sounding IRs of a Mesa cab with V30s. So in the AX8, I bought this pack, and these were my go-to IRs, this 57MC. And then in the other slot, let's load up another one of those impulses. So again, we'll go to factory number 2, and we can use the search function, which is super cool. Actually, I'll show you a cool little trick that goes along with this. If you want to find certain impulses quicker, say you've got favorite impulses like I do, you can right-click them, and you can assign them a color. So in this case, I'm going to go with, let's just go with red because it's the first color. So I'll do that one. And then the other one that I want is this 121 impulse. I'm going to assign that the color red as well. So that's pretty cool. And now what we can do is, without having the search feature, I can filter these by color. So I can just go, give me all the cabs that I've marked in red. And there it is. So I want the 121 impulse. And I'll set this to about 9 dB quieter than my 57 IR. That's normally, when I use these two mics in the studio, is kind of the blend that I go for. So we'll start with those two. And, you know, if you fire this amp up at the stock settings and you're going, it's going to sound like Metallica, you're going to be so disappointed because it sounds like this. It's sort of honky and bland and uninspiring, and that's because of the design of the Mark Series amp. If you have a look at the preamp tab, you'll notice that unlike a lot of other amps, the tone stack location is pre-gain. So what that means is that the bass, middle, and treble control the character of the gain, which means if you have too much bass, your gain is going to be really mushy. So what we want to do is set the bass low. I normally go with these settings. Say bass around 2. That's normally a pretty good place to start. And, whoops, press the wrong button there, my bad. And we'll go with the mids at around 3. Again, we don't want too much mid-range content because I want a really chunky rhythm tone happening here. I did it again. I'm just gonna move the knob. Can I do that? Yeah, let's move that down. So do it old school. So down to around 3. And then the treble, I'm gonna push up, say to around 6 or 7. And one thing I also like to do is bring the master volume down on these Mark Series amps. I'll set that at 4. And at the moment, it still kind of sounds like garbage. It's just now tinny garbage. So there are the preliminary settings. Let's do this. Let's go to the output EQ, because a real Mark Series amp normally has these tone controls and then it has a 5-band graphic EQ. You can see one of the output EQ types is actually this Mark Series EQ. So the sound at the moment is really tinny, and it's really kind of honky and mid-rangey. So what we want to do is add some low end and pull out some mid-range. So I normally go with these settings. Say add about 4.5 on the slider, and then I like to pull out 240. I find that's a good frequency to pull out with these particular IRs. Otherwise, it does sound really sort of muddy in the low mids. And then pull out a lot of this 750. I like to take out about 6 dB. And then what we're going to do, we'll go with just 3 dB there at 2200. You've got to be careful with this one because this is kind of the ice pick frequency with these amps. And then I'll add about half of that at 6600. So now with this guitar, we've got a pretty inspiring guitar sound. It's just not saturated enough. So what I like to do is we'll go back to the basic tab, turn the overdrive all the way up. Sounds like this. And that is way more the vibe you expect when you think of a Mesa Mark II-C Plus. However, I find this is really just a little bit too bright sounding with this particular cab. So I like to turn the presence down to 1. Have a listen to this now. And as you can hear, it's so gloriously saturated but tight, and there's note definition. If I play sort of complex chords, you can hear all the notes in the chord. Which is what we want out of our Mark series amp. So, I mean, that just sounds great on its own. What I like to do though, normally I would add a drive block in front of the amp just to sort of change the character a little bit more, but we can do that with the preamp section here with the input boost. So we can select an input boost and then select between a few different types of boosts. In this case, I like the Super Overdrive. This is what it sounds like. It really takes this amp into just crazy territory. What we can do there, you can hear that it's kind of like thin the low end out just a little bit too much. So I'll back off a little bit of this treble here, and then we can play around with the output EQ again. You might want to add a little bit more bass. Say if we take that to 6, it's going to sound like this. And one thing that we can do there, you can hear that now the low end's a little bit hard to tame. If we go back to the cab block, let's set the low cut to 80 Hertz. And this is going to take out some of that woofy low end. Now it should sound super focused. So that's pretty cool. As an alternative to the Super Overdrive, which you might prefer, is let's go to that preamp section and turn the boost off. We can essentially let's add a little bit more input drive. So take that just up to 6. The input drive will change the character of the gain as well. So turning it up makes it a little bit darker sounding. I'm going to turn that input boost off. And again, this amp with these York Audio impulses sound amazing. What we'll do is I'm going to emulate some clon style settings with the drive block. We'll use the FET boost, which is the ticket for these kind of clon settings. Thanks to Yek on the forum, has his own clon style settings. Whoops. There we go, FET boost, and Austin Buddy as well. What you want to do, first thing, select the high cut and set that to about 6500. Then we're going to bump some mids just a little bit. And in the advanced section, we're going to change the clipping type from FET. So it's no longer an FET boost. It's essentially like a germanium boost now. So we'll set that clip type to germanium. And if we go back to the basic features, let's set the drive to about 2. And we'll set the tone to 6. I am all thumbs tonight, pressing the wrong buttons. I apologize for that. And then we're going to slam the level all the way up. And I'll just click this one on and off for you guys so you can hear the difference. And that's my bag right there. That's the kind of sound I like to go to. I'm a little bit OCD. I'll turn that all the way up to 10. And yeah, that sounds so thick and chunky. And one of the great things about the Axe FX 3 is you've got this channels feature. So I'm going to set that up as my main rhythm sound. But what I'm going to do here is in the channel section, I'll click on it and I'll say copy channel A to channel B. So then once that's copied, I can flick over and I'm going to make one change to the amp. I'm going to set the fat switch on for channel B, and this can be my lead channel. So we've got that happening. I'm going to save this, by the way, and I can go through and I can name the scenes. So let's say I want scene 2 to be channel B on the amp. I'll just double check that the cab lock hasn't changed over. It has. Be careful of that. I'll set that back to channel A. Wicked. I'm going to call this lead. Hit save, and then when we go back to scene number 1, I will call this one rhythm. Very imaginative names there. Let's see, we've got scene 1, we've got the amp on channel A. You know what, I'm just going to call it chunk because I think it sounds so chunky. Alright, there we go. We'll hit save on that, and then when I go back over to scene 2, I better turn my drive pedal on as well because I do want that on. Okay, fantastic. Let's have a listen to scene number 2 now. And you know what I'm going to do in scene 2? I'm going to add a little bit more drive just because I want this to be my lead scene. I want it to be super over the top. Again, this is becoming quite comical. I'm just going to turn it up. There we go. Okay, so with a little bit more drive from the clon style boost. And because I want that FET boost only to have the drive at 3 on channel 2, I'll bring that back down here. And again, we'll use the channels feature. So I will change, well, I won't change anything. I'll copy channel A to channel B, which is pretty cool. And then in scene 2, I can set my drive channel to be channel B. And then I've got more gain. How awesome is that? I can save that. And then I can go chunk, which is scene 1. And as you can see, the FET boost is on channel A. And that is gloriously saturated. I really like that. One final tweak that I've been liking in the Axe FX 3 is to use the room parameter. So what I will do in there is I'll set this to say about 40%. And let's actually A-B that so we can go from 0. And I'll go back to the main rhythm scene. And if you're running direct, this is just kind of take a little bit of that like full-on, you know, close mic cab thing out of it, and it will be a little bit more pleasant, especially if you're playing with in-ear monitors. So, or if you're listening to this with headphones, you'll definitely be able to hear the difference. that's pretty cool. What I will do in scene 2 is I'm going to show you guys this block that I've been using. It's actually using a multi-delay. So we've got a multi-tap delay, and in the block library, I've just called it lead co-delay for chorus and delay. And we've got this new addition of chorus in the quad tap delay block. So what I've done is I've set up delay 1 and 2 as a stereo chorus. You can see 3 milliseconds of delay and 6 milliseconds of delay, and then I've applied chorus to those two lines. You can see the depth is just set at 10 and 15% on each of them. And then delay 3 and 4 is set up as an eighth note and a quarter note. Basically, if you've watched Andy Timmons' rig rundown, this is what he does, and it sounds amazing, but I've just added chorus to it. So that can be in the lead scene. And again, how cool is this? All this stuff is just in the box. I'm not using third-party IRs. I'm not using an outboard pedal like a Klon. It's just all happening. So I will turn that off in scene 1. And then scene 2, I can have it on. Have a listen to it in scene 2. It's so nice to play. And that kind of completes the picture for me. That is plenty of good stuff in there. All I would add, if I was doing a ragdoll gig, I basically need a rotary speaker sound and I need a rhythmic delay. So they would be my other two scenes. But if I just want to wail with the 2C++ at home, or, you know, if I'm doing a session, I actually use this preset. Well, obviously not this preset because I've just made it from scratch, but the equivalent to record some guitar solos for the next Ragdoll album, and I was super stoked with the way it sounded, using this delay block and everything like that. So I will chuck this preset up on the Exchange. Thank you guys for tuning in. Leave a comment if you liked it. If you've got any other questions about the 2C++ block or any things that you want to play around with, all I would suggest is, if this is too dark or too bright for your taste, just play around with the output EQ, and it can do a lot of damage. You can increase 2200, say bring it up to 4.5, and bring 6600 up to 3, and it sounds like this. Which is way more metal sounding to me. At the moment, I'm digging it with those settings of 3 and about 1.5. And again, you will have to change this if you're playing really loud. And what I would suggest is if you are playing really, really loud through, an FRFR, be really careful of these two frequencies here. Don't be afraid to pull out 2200, especially because it's kind of like the ice pick frequency. But for recording, it sounds amazing. It really makes it pop in a mix. And this is pretty much exactly the way I would run it live. You might also need to pull down the 80 Hertz one if there's too much boom. But yeah, until then, thanks so much for tuning into the tutorial, and I will see you guys next time.